It's now my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker for this morning. Commissioner Miriam Gluyas is the Territorial Commander for the Salvation Army Australia and Chair of its Board of Governance. Well, she's appearing already. I better hurry up. In this role, she holds many responsibilities, but the most significant one to note is her responsibility for the spiritual leadership and direction of the Salvation Army Australia. Having served the Salvation Army for almost 40 years in various appointments, Miriam's favourite roles have been as a church planter, pastor and Chief Secretary in Papua New Guinea and Divisional Commander of the New South Wales ACT Division. Miriam has a heart for people and is committed to seeing lives transformed across our nation. She particularly enjoyed her work with youth and children, as well as her divisional and territorial roles, saying it's the people she has met along the way that have made it an amazing experience. Commissioner Miriam Gluyas is motivated by co-founder of the Salvation Army, Catherine Booth's quote, "There is no improving the future without disturbing the present," and believes that God is doing some amazing things and will continue to do so. Let's give Miriam an enthusiastic West Australian welcome.
Well, thank you, friends. And actually, I'm simply just Miriam. I like to say that, and it is so wonderful to be with you today. Thank you to the Governor and Mrs. Dawson. Thank you to Nico for the wonderful welcome and the way that you've treated me and welcomed me into your state. Thank you to the committee, everyone who's part of this. This is magnificent, isn't it? You lead the way in this, and it is just beautiful, and it's my absolute privilege to be here. I don't know about you, but I love stories, and I often read biographies, and I kind of devour them because I love to hear a person's story. So what's your story today? I'm going to share a little bit of mine and some of the defining moments of my life. And when Nico asked me, I thought, I haven't got a very exciting story, but I hope that some of the stories might resonate with you and that God would speak to you, because each one of us was put here for a purpose, and it's good, isn't it? You're allowed to nod, you're allowed to speak, okay? It is good, isn't it? And I believe that we are here to bring hope and a future. So my story began, and I introduced these three people. So that is my nana, my dad, and my mum. My nana lived to 104. Now, she was an incredible lady. She was strong. But I always remember as a young girl watching her kneel down beside her bed. And sometimes I'd see her crying and I think, what have I done? Okay, some of you know that experience, but she was a praying grandmother. My dad is still alive and he is my sparring partner. So he'll be 90 soon. He barracks for Collingwood, I barrack for Geelong. So we spar about many things. He has very strong opinions on politics, and I'm glad he doesn't say them outside of his house. But we spar about a lot of things. And my beautiful mum, I'll tell you about her a little bit later. But I grew up in a family where we were absolutely loved. We thought we could be anything, do anything. I'm a PLC girl. Not many people think that, Presbyterian Ladies College. But I had a beautiful education, and I was going to be a professional golfer and a school teacher, and ended up a Salvation Army officer. I would have been much richer if I'd become a golfer, wouldn't I? So I had this incredible childhood, and I think my nana probably shaped that a lot. She was the one who took us to church. She was the one who prayed for us. And just after she died, I dedicated or christened one of my beautiful great nieces. And they had taken quite a while to have this child. And on the day, I watched, and my niece had a little anklet bracelet on I hadn't seen before. I said, "Oh, that's nice." She said, "You know what that is, don't you?" I said, "No." And she said, "That is Grandma's necklace that I had made into a little anklet as a reminder that she prayed for those children every single day, and here they are." So I have a legacy of parents and grandparents who have been there all along the way and believed in me. who have prayed for me, who have seen miracles happen. That's a beautiful legacy, isn't it? I know of the goodness of God. My second defining moment was a very interesting one. Now, when I became a Salvation Army officer, I grew up in Ballarat, but my parents went for a holiday to Port Macquarie, said, we're all going. And we said, no, we're not. And of course we did. So we ended up in Port Macquarie, and I went to the Salvation Army Training College in Sydney. Now, you kind of do these placements, and I was sent to Waterloo or to Redfern. And if you know Redfern, there's those huge towers. Now, we had to go knocking on doors and doing all sorts of strange things. And I thought, this is so different to the life I've always lived. And there were some interesting people who lived in those places, and I could tell you some very funny stories of what happened while we were there. But the end of the year came, and I thought, oh, that's good, I'll never have to go back there again. And there was this little old lady, she just didn't like me. Imagine that. She really didn't like me. But 2 years later, I got a phone call, and the Salvation Army said, you're coming back to the training college to be one of our trainers. I said, oh, which place do I need to go to work with the cadets and the people? Well, of course it was Waterloo and Redfern. And this little old lady was still there. But God had a lesson to teach me. So at Christmas time, I couldn't go back to my family that year. So a few of us decided we would have Christmas and little old Thelma would be invited. Now, by this time, she liked me a little bit more. So we're sitting around the table at that lunch, and I said, Thelma, tell us your story. She said, my story is a bit of a sad one. She said, I was adopted out at birth, and above my crib, it said no name. She said, for my whole life, I was sent from family to family to family to family. I've never really felt loved. And then she started to cry. And she said, I sit at this table today as your guest, and you've brought me gifts. And I feel for the first time I am part of a family. Well, I wept that day, and I repented that day, and I said, God, may I always love people who were different to me. And I think that's probably why God put me into the Salvation Army, so that we might serve generations who desperately need hope and desperately need love. And it was definitely a defining moment. The third one came when I was in youth work, and in the Salvation Army we had this weird system, okay? So every couple of years you'd get moved around. If you got a thick letter at a certain time of year, that meant you were moving. If you got a thin letter, you were staying. We don't do that anymore, thank goodness. Well, this year I got a thick letter, and I opened it up, and I was so excited because I was going to a new church plant. I thought, wow, we can create something. God can do something really, really good. And I'm sitting there in the car, and God says, so are you going to do it your way or my way? And I thought, that's very rude, God. What do you mean? Well, I knew exactly what he meant, because you see, I can do a lot of things in my own strength. But he said, I want you to do it my way. I want you to rely on me. Well, I went into this church plant. It was magnificent. Newcastle in New South Wales, and lots of people came to that church. And we would fast and pray once a week, and we would believe that God could do anything. And just tell you one story from there. So I'm a single lady, and we had as many men in that church as we did women. I said, God, I need a man. I'm still praying it, okay? Still haven't found one, seriously. So what happened was we had a certain amount of money away, and we needed a considerable amount of money. So we started praying and say, God, we need you to come through. I didn't know it, and this man didn't know it, but he was over in another nation, and God said to him, I want you to go back and I want you to be generous. So he turned up and knocked on my door in the days of checks, and he gave me an envelope and he said, I don't really know what this is about, but God said to give you this amount of money. Well, I opened up the envelope. How much was in the money? Exactly the amount we needed. So you see, my God comes through. He is a good God, and I learned that it's much better to depend on him than to do things in my own strength. Wonder if you've ever been hurt. Hurt defines us, doesn't it? Well, a man really hurt me once, and I was so mad with him. And as God said to me, he's going to make me to lie down in green pastures, and he will restore my soul. And this is what else he said. Now, I'm a visionary. I have an idea every, few minutes. And he said, you will not get any more vision until you deal with this issue. Because he said, actually, he doesn't care, but you've taken it on. And I thought, wow. Well, that went on for months. It drove me insane, okay? Drove me insane. But I knew that I had to sit down and do that deep work and allow him to restore my soul. And I can tell you the exact moment and the exact place months later when he said, and now you've done that work, you can have your vision back. And ever since, I've believed that my God continues to come through. Now, some of you might be sitting here and think, that's a bit weird that God speaks to you. Well, if you're in a relationship, it's a two-way deal, isn't it? The next defining moment is unexpected moments. Have you had those weird moments? I was sitting in a room one night and God said, I want you to go and speak to that lady over there and tell her her story. And I thought, I don't know the lady and I don't know her story. I said, no, I'm not going. She'll think I'm weird. And he said, that's okay. I said, it's okay for you. And I thought, okay. So off I went, and I went to this lady. I said, you're going to think this is really weird. And she looked like, yeah, you are really weird. And I said, so God told me to tell you your story. And I don't know how to this day, but I told her her story. She wept. And she said, if your God is that kind, I want to know your God. And she is a beautiful believer today who follows him very closely. Sometimes we've got to go with the unexpected, don't we? Does that build our faith? Oh, yeah. Do we believe that God can come through again and again? Yes, we do. Yes, good. Someone's speaking over here. That's good. So our God comes through. He desires to speak to us. He desires to work in our lives. He desires to bless us with that. Now, I was having a wonderful time in my church plant, and I got another one of those letters from the Salvation Army. Oh, we want you to go into an administrative position. I'm thinking, I don't want to go into an administrative position. I want to stay at the front line. That's where it's all happening. So you don't kind of have a choice because someone moves into your house and you have to move out. So I thought, probably better go. So I head down to Sydney. And I thought, I'm not just doing this, it's boring, okay? So I said to the Salvation Army, I've got this good idea. I think I could be a church pastor as well as do the admin stuff. And it was kind of like, yeah, right. But I said, there's 3 churches that I think I could work with as well. And I knew which one I thought God was saying. So I got to go to Auburn. Now, I'd been in East Lakes, 96% Aussie. I go to Auburn, well, that is the people of the nations, absolute opposite. And we had there a beautiful community of white Aussies in this church that had been well discipled. And God says, you're going to be a lighthouse to the nations. And that's what he did. It went from being very, very white to 26 different nations meeting together, and now it's 42 different nations. And a young black South African, yes, worked with me, and we had the most wonderful time. I did the admin job. That was still boring, but we did this, and that was really exciting. You got to go with what God tells you, don't you? One day, I was at an event. It was a multicultural event, and there was this beautiful young African girl stood up. Her name was Princess. I thought, I know Princess, but I knew her when she was this big. And I was so proud of her because, you see, she came through 2 refugee camps with her family, and it was the most difficult time. She'd been schooled in those refugee camps, but it was nothing near the standard of education in Australia. Now, we had a church that was full of beautiful, white, well-discipled Christians, but they then got this heart for the nations when they heard the stories of people. And they wanted to help in every way that they could. So they taught English, they would go and teach people how to shop, how to use a mobile phone, all sorts of things. They engaged beautifully. So Princess came and she went to school the first day. Imagine this, just stepping out of a refugee camp, they said, "You're in year 10. She came back to our church that afternoon. She said, "I cannot do this. I don't know what they're talking about." And our people said, "That's okay. We'll teach you how to research. We'll teach you about education. We will get you up to this level again." And they did the journey with her. She stood on that platform that day. She said, "I did year 10. I did year 12. I did university. I am now nursing in a major hospital, and I am the prayer warrior at Auburn." Well, I love the people of the nations, and I'm so glad they are represented here today. But what beauty and what colour they add to our life. And I think God is sending missionaries from other nations into our nation these days. And if God says to you, "Go to the ends of the earth," you go, won't you? Because he does amazing, amazing things. He comes through. So after Auburn, I get sent to Papua New Guinea. There's another delight. And I had the best time in Papua New Guinea. People who have nothing, oh my goodness, they got everything. The joy of the Lord. Boy, they can dance, can't they? I was standing around one day in a, yes, that's me. Now, the funny thing is that everyone in Papua New Guinea thought I was a beautiful Highland princess, and my friends back in Australia are writing rude notes on Facebook, and I think, stop, they think I'm beautiful. So on Independence Day, oh, do they get dressed up, and oh, do they dance. So I'm standing in this big ring one day, and everyone's dancing and singing. 2 of our Salvation Army officers came up to me. They said, "Colonel, your friend, she can dance. You need practice." I said, you're sacked. They laughed a lot. I had the best time in Papua New Guinea, and they taught me so many things. Such joy. But when I was in Papua New Guinea, my beautiful mum would ring me, and she'd started a journey of Alzheimer's. And she would say, "Miriam, when are you coming home? When are you coming home?" I was in this dilemma because I loved my mum absolutely, and I felt God had called me to Papua New Guinea. Now, it's not always safe in Papua New Guinea, so we lived in a compound. Every night I would jog around that compound. There wasn't much else to do at night time. And I would say, "God, what do you want me to do?" This went on for months. And one day he stopped me. He said, "Miriam, I want you to go home. I want you to spend that time with your mum. I don't want you to worry about any appointments. I don't want you to worry about what's going to happen. I'll look after you, and you do that. I will never regret that decision." My beautiful mum spent her time mainly with my dad, who went to visit her every day, and then eventually he said, "I can't do it anymore," but I wanted that to be his decision. So she went into a home, and then COVID hit, and I said to a friend of mine whose mum had just died, "I am praying that just as it's brought you great grief, that won't be my story." A couple of months later, that was my story. And my sister rang and said she's now in palliative care and she's not going to make it too much longer. And I'm stuck in Sydney thinking, I can't get to her. In the final moments of her life, I said goodbye on an iPad. And that was one of the hardest days of my life. But you know what? She hadn't been with it for a couple of weeks, but she opened her eyes. And I said, "Mum, it is okay to go now." And God gave me this beautiful picture of her entering heaven. And I'm glad for the kindness of God in the most difficult of moments. And they hit us, don't they? And they define us. I'm so glad for a beautiful mum. I'm so glad that I listened and came home. And I'm so glad I didn't worry about what might be. Because actually a title doesn't matter, a testimony does, doesn't it? And God wants us to live it the way that He wants us to live. So many defining moments for me. And just recently, because I reckon we keep having them, don't we? Just recently, someone sent me an email. He's a prophet. He hears from God very clearly. Some prophets I just don't understand. I read it and think, I don't know what you're talking about. And I have to pray and try to discern what that is. But this one said halftime. And he talked about Moses. And Moses had an experience of a burning bush. That'd be pretty defining, wouldn't it? And in that passage, it says that he turned aside to see. And I wonder if you ever think it's time for me to turn aside to see. It's a bit like a footy game, isn't it? And a few weeks ago, there was a footy game with St Kilda, and they were way behind. Now, do you ever notice what happens at halftime when a side is way behind? All the supporters are going, oh, the coach is an idiot, you're all idiots. Of course, they're not on the arena, are they? But, it's hopeless. So the St Kilda fans are giving them heaps. And then they must have changed the tactics because something changed in the third quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, it was 6 goals, then it was 5 goals, then it was 4 goals. Oh, well, the crowd, oh, yeah, you're great. Come on, we're cheering you on. We can do this. We can do this. And gets to 2 goals, 1 goal, and they win the game. And I reckon that's a word for us today, and it's a strong word. I sent it to all our pastors yesterday. It's half-time, friends. God's had some incredible defining moments in all of our lives. And if you're feeling hopeful about the future today, I'm urging you on, I'm spurring you on, because you're hope givers and hope bringers. If you're feeling like, I have no idea where I'm going right now, I'm really struggling, we have a good God who's saying, hey, it's half time. Turn aside and see. Because I reckon we're in days now, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. That's what it says in the Word of God. We don't know what to do. Who knows how to solve Ukraine and Russia? Who knows how to solve Israel and Palestine and Gaza? What's happening in Africa? What's happening across our world? In Australia, so many people lack hope, don't they? It's half time. Turn aside and see. Because God's not finished writing your story. He's not finished writing my story. There's a whole lot more to go. God's with you. He loves you. He speaks to you. He wants to bless you. That's His desire. Half time? Ready for the next quarter? Ready to win the game? Because you see, every single one of us in this room is different, and God's writing a beautiful story over all of your lives. So keep going, won't you? Don't give up. Turn aside. See. Believe. Imagine all He can do for you. Bless you, friends.